The Miami Dolphins got off of the schneid on Monday night against the New York Jets. Can they keep it going against the Carolina Panthers? Let's find out.
You're listening to the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network.
Hello, Miami Dolphin fans, and welcome to the Same Old Dolphin Show, part of the DolphinsTalk.com podcast network. I'm Josh Katzker. With me today and every day is my brother from the exact same mother, Aaron the Brain. Aaron, say hello to the people.
Hello to the people.
Brain, crap, give me... This is very awkward. Give me 1 second.
I don't know if this is part of the show or not. I don't know if this is planned or not.
Let's fucking go! Come on! Let's go, Cubbies! Woo!
Oh, man.
We're recording. We're live right now, moments after the Chicago Cubs eliminated the San Diego Padres in Game 3 of the National League Wild Card Series, and I am fired TF up right now, folks. I am in a very, very good mood after the Cubs gave me a heart attack, but they went in and they defeated the San Diego Padres 3-1 to advance to the NLDS against the stinking no good, horrible Milwaukee Brewers. But listen, I know it's a Dolphins podcast, but my emotions are running very high right now. Longtime listeners will know I grew up in South Florida. There wasn't a baseball team there when I was a kid, so the Dolphins were my football team, but the baseball team that I got attached to was the Chicago Cubs because I was watching them on WGN, and they had Harry Carey and Steve Stone on commentary, so I became a big Cubs fan as a kid. Later, the Marlins came to town, and that was never the, I would cheer for the Marlins, but always my first love was the Chicago Cubs. And it's been a while. 2016, we were doing our old podcast and the Cubs went to the World Series and won the World Series. And then the following year they won the first series that they were in, but that was it. And then since then, they haven't won a postseason series since 2017. Now that's nothing compared to what the Dolphins have been through in terms of droughts, but winning this wild card series was a big load off for the Chicago Cubs. So I'm in a good mood right now. Just wanted to get that off my chest. Now we can talk a little bit about the Miami Dolphins. Brain, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great. I'd be remiss if I didn't share this comment on the screen. Cap for life. I like the Cubs. Reminds me of the 2003 NLCS.
Okay, see, that's just uncalled for. There's no reason to bring that up. Maybe we'll talk about that on the bonus segment that we're going to do for subscribers to Dolphins Talk Extra. If you are a Dolphins Talk Extra subscriber, you're going to get a bonus segment of the Same Old Dolphin Show. You also get bonus shows from Mike. Lots of good content coming your way. You get access to our Discord, contests, live watch-alongs, happy hour shows, all kinds of other stuff. And you can join the fun for as little as $3 a month over at patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. So join in over there. But we're here to talk about the Miami Dolphins, Brain, and it's time to look ahead because the Miami Dolphins got off the schneid on Monday night against the New York Jets, got a big win against the Jets at home on Monday Night Football. It wasn't the most well-played game, but it was the first time this season that the Dolphins were able to, we really felt like, okay, the Dolphins are cooking here on offense. They're making things happen. They're committing to the run. It was a very well-balanced attack from the Miami Dolphins. And though it kind of dried up a little bit and you kind of got that sort of mediocre Miami Dolphins malaise that sort of happens in the second half of games sometimes, they did enough to win. And granted, if they were fortunate that they were playing against a New York Jets team that was a complete mess. But the fact of the matter is they got the win. And so now the test is, can you go and do it on the road against a team that is similarly in bad shape? Brain, so how are you? Typically we would do a pulse check segment, but the game was on Monday night and we recorded immediately afterwards. How are you feeling right now about just looking ahead to this game against Carolina?
I think it's a test. There's no game on the schedule for when your team is playing as poorly as the Dolphins are playing so far this year. And I know they won last week, but it's not like it was a banner game. And at the end of the day, like, look, you lost your best player. Like, let's not bury the lead. Like, the Tyreek Hill injury is a massive, massive loss to this team. And this team on the offensive side sort of needs to reinvent itself. And we'll talk a little bit about that, when we talk about what the Dolphins need to do when they have the ball. But that's kind of the big storyline. And the most interesting thing coming into this game is, what does the Dolphins offense look like without Tyreek Hill against a team that doesn't have to prepare for Tyreek Hill, with a Dolphins team that has a week to prepare a game plan, knowing that they're going to be without Tyreek Hill, not just for 1 week, but for the remainder of the season. What does that look like? What does that change the play calling? Does it change the game plan? Does it change Tua, like how Tua plays? There's a lot of unknown that is going to be very intriguing to watch. But the biggest thing is kind of what you touched on. Like, you won a game. Great. You played a solid football game. You took advantage of some really bad Jets mistakes, and you hung on to win a football game at home on Monday night against the Jets. Now you go on the road against a team that's a little bit of an enigma. I don't know that. I mean, I don't think Carolina is a good football team, but I don't know exactly what to make of them, because 2 weeks ago at home, they pitched a shutout against Atlanta, 30-0, dominant performance. Now, a lot of that, when you win a game 30-0, it's never because your team did everything right and just blew the doors off of the other team. A lot of times it's a combination of you did everything right and that other team just had a miserable day at the office. And I think that was largely the case in that game against Atlanta. But then they came out the very next week on the road against New England, and they were able to move the ball on offense, but defensively they could not stop New England. They had all kinds of problems on special teams, and New England handled them. Was up 28-6 at halftime, ends up with 42-13, easy victory. So who is this Carolina Panthers team? I don't know, but they seem to play a lot better at home. And so what does that look like for a Dolphins team who, look, they just played their best game. They won, but they lost Tyreek Hill, and now they're going to try to replicate that performance on the road. I think it's going to be a tough game. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's going to be another game similar to the game that we just watched against the Jets, where it's two definitively bad football teams. And it's going to be which team screws up more.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to say it. It's going to be the team with the cleaner operation. And as it was on Monday night, it was the Miami Dolphins. So can that carry on to Sunday's game against the Panthers? Well, we're going to find out, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight here on the Same Old Dolphins Show. But before we do that, a reminder to you, if you're not doing so already, to make sure you are following us at Amplified to Rock, at Aaron the Brain. Subscribe to the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Shout out to everybody watching on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel. Go ahead and smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Also, shout out to everybody watching live on the I'm a Miami Dolphin Fan Facebook page, run by the incredible and handsome Carlos Hernandez. Shout out to all of you. Make sure you download, rate, review, and subscribe to the Same Old Dolphin Show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, everywhere you get your podcasts. And of course, make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. It is your one-stop shop for all things Miami Dolphins. And if you want some Miami Dolphins gear, the only place to do it is caneswear.com. Don't go to Fanatics. Don't go to the Miami Dolphins shop. Go to caneswear.com. Support a locally owned business and get the best and most affordable Miami Dolphins, Florida Panthers, Miami Heat. Miami Marlins season is over, but I bet you can still get the gear. What about the Miami Hurricanes? Got a big game Saturday night coming up against FSU. So lots of good stuff coming your way and lots of good stuff available at caneswear.com. Brian, let's start on offense as we preview Dolphins, Panthers, because I think, what's interesting is that for a long time, teams knew exactly what they were going to do defensively against the Miami Dolphins. You're going to play your two high safeties and you're going to force the Dolphins to beat you with the short game. The elimination, or rather the absence of Tyreek Hill, which, let's be clear, I think it was something that we all expected there to be a point this season where the Dolphins were going to be playing without Tyreek Hill, because I think many of us thought that he was going to be a trade piece for somebody. Now the Dolphins find themselves without him surprisingly earlier than they expected. But again, teams have been able to game plan for the Dolphins in a very specific way because they knew what the Dolphins wanted to do. The absence of Tyreek Hill, I actually think, makes things a little bit more difficult for the Carolina Panthers come Sunday, because I don't think they can come in with the kind of certainty about what the Dolphins are going to want to do. Because you would think that the Dolphins are going to default to becoming a more run-heavy team and, really trying to focus on that. But let's not forget that the Dolphins do have Jalen Waddle. They do have Malik Washington, and they do have, quite frankly, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who are all capable downfield receivers. They also have Taj Washington, who hasn't played a meaningful NFL snap yet, but he's somebody that is in the mix as well. I don't think it's off the table that the Dolphins are going to want to play the deep game, but it wouldn't surprise me if Carolina approached this game thinking that, the Dolphins are going to be really focusing on the short game, and to see Carolina make the decision to play to slow that down and to worry less about being beaten over the top until the Dolphins prove to them that they can do that.
Yeah, I think it's fair, but I also think it in a way, it sort of opens that up for Miami because of that. And that's a question. We don't know. We don't know what the Dolphins are going to do. We also don't know what opposing defenses are going to do, because if they see, or they know that Tyreek Hill isn't going to play, then, does that mean less too high safety? That mean more focusing on stopping the run? My gut tells me, if I was, constructing a defensive game plan, my defensive game plan would be on obvious passing downs to roll coverage over to Jalen Waddle. But I don't know that I'm necessarily putting all of my, focus on Jalen Waddle, because now I'm definitely going to put a lot of attention on Devon Achane. But I don't know that at this point, with as much as Devon Achane has been used between last year and this year, I don't know that that's not necessarily what defenses were already doing. And it's not really changing what you're doing on the back end, what the Dolphins are doing with Devon Achane, because so much of what they're doing with Devon Achane are throws at or behind the line of scrimmage. And so it's really just about spying him with linebackers and bracket coverage, underneath, and just accounting for that and playing a lot more zone and a lot less man. And I think teams will still play a lot more zone and less man coverage. But I think what you'll see more of is maybe single high safety looks where they're shading the coverage over to Jalen Waddle's side of the field. And that's going to open up the rest of the field. And it's a question of who can get open. The guy that jumps out at me is Darren Waller, because we saw what he did on, on a snap count in specific high leverage situations, third downs, fourth downs, goal line, he was a big part of what the Dolphins wanted to do. A big third down conversion on the Dolphins' opening touchdown drive. He catches the big touchdown on the, on the fourth down. And so if opposing defenses are going to play single high safety and they're either going to sit back in the zone or they're going to play man under, then you're going to have man coverage for Darren Waller. And at this point, off of one game, it's one game, but off of one game, I'd say, look, Darren Waller looks like a guy who can beat man coverage. And so Darren Waller would be a part of a part of the offensive game plan for me. I'm curious to see the usage of guys like Malik Washington, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, and Taj Washington. I'm not expecting big usage from Taj Washington, but frankly, it doesn't really matter what I'm expecting because I expected one reception for 8 yards for Darren Waller last week, and look what happened. So who knows? But if I was to guess, I would say Nick Westbrook-Ikhine has his role, which is he's primarily there to be a blocker and be a guy that, whether it's in the low red zone or on like third downs, they can throw the ball up if he's in man coverage and he can make contested catches, but they're not drawing up plays for Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. Malik Washington and Taj Washington are the two guys that they're not Tyreek Hill, obviously. And they're not going to get used nearly as much. You're not going to scheme that plays for them as much as you're doing it for Tyreek Hill. But those are the guys who, on some level, have somewhat of a similar skill set as far as explosiveness, quick twitch, agility in short areas, the ability to separate. I'm curious how much those guys get used. But at the end of the day, what worked against the Jets with Tyreek, and then again, once Tyreek exited the game, was balance. Running the football, getting Tua under center more, the play action game, that only works if you run the football. If you can't run the football, if you get into bad down and distances, third and long situations, and you don't have Tyreek Hill, who has bailed out this Dolphins offense countless times over the past few years on these third and long situations, it's a recipe for disaster because I don't trust that Tua is going to just make it happen without his best guy. And ultimately, aside from running the ball, you're paying Jalen Waddle to be a wide receiver one because regardless of whether he was 1A, 1B, or wide receiver 2, after this year or at some point this year, you were always going to move on from Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle is being paid to be wide receiver 1. He now has an extended opportunity at being the wide receiver 1 for the rest of this season before Miami decides what they want to do as far as do they need another wide receiver in that room to complement him? Is he not a real wide receiver 1? We're going to get a real long look at Jalen Waddle as wide receiver 1.
How do you feel like this Dolphins offensive line is going to match up with the defensive front of Carolina, which seems to be, with their pass rush and their run defending, it feels like that is one of the strengths of this team right now?
I mean, I'm not so concerned on the edge with our tackles. I think Patrick Paul has played really well. Larry Borum, for all the crap that we've given him, has been okay. I mean, he's Larry Borum.
I would say serviceable.
Yeah, he's been serviceable. The issue has been, which is ironic because it was the issue last year, and it was the issue that the Dolphins supposedly, invested in all off season. The issue has been the guards. James Daniels gets hurt 4 plays into the season, and was replaced by Keon Smith and then replaced by Cole Strange, and neither of them have looked any good. And frankly, it is what it is. I'm not expecting them to look very good. Jonah Savainea has been sort of up and down, but largely has been, below average in pass protection. He's been a little bit better in the running game. And that's kind of the strength of the Carolina defense, is the interior of the defensive line. Derek Brown is a monster. And, we've got an undersized center in Aaron Brewer who does a nice job. It's a mismatch. You're not just going to run the ball up the middle against this team. You're not going to do a bunch of halfback dives against this Carolina Panthers team with your interior offensive line and that interior defensive line. So if you're going to make things happen in the running game, you kind of have to do it on the perimeter. You have to do it with some misdirection. You have to be able to loosen them up a little bit. You have to be able to run the ball, though. You can't just say, we're not going to run the ball. We're going to pass the ball to open up the run, because you don't have Tyreek Hill, and your offense has operated at its best when it's balanced. So you've got to find a way to run the ball, however that might be. I know you like to get on Mike McDaniel's case for you can't call straightforward football. Well, this isn't the game to play straightforward football. You've got to find a way to get your mismatches, to manufacture some things on the ground, get yourself in good down and distance. And, ultimately, that will start to loosen things up in the passing game. But I think you're going to struggle to just run the ball up the middle, whether it's Devon Achane or Ollie Gordon in this game.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how that matchup goes. I think that is truly going to be the difference, because if the Dolphins can successfully run the ball, that's going to open up everything else. And we saw that against the Jets. It was the key. We saw it against the Buffalo game, in the Buffalo game. Their ability to run the ball opens everything else up for this offense. So whether or not they can do that is, well, I guess we're going to have to wait and see once we get there. But before we get there, we got to talk about the other side of the ball. And before we do that, we're going to talk about mybookie.com. Mybookie.com is the place. If you are wanting to make a wager, perhaps on the Dolphins game on Sunday, perhaps on the National League Division Series, the Brewers are currently minus 147 to win game 1 of the National League Division Series against my beloved Chicago Cubs. But if you're trying to make a bet, head to MyBookie. If you've never bet with MyBookie before, use the promo code Dolphins when you sign up, and you will get a $500 bet back bonus token, which you can implement, and you can bet up to $500. And if you lose, you get all that money back. So why not take a shot on MyBookie? Use that promo code Dolphins when you sign up to get that $500 bet back bonus token. That's mybookie.com. Defense. Let's talk a little bit about the Miami Dolphins defense. Now, here's the thing. The Carolina offense is a shambles right now. Many receivers down. They've got Tet McMillan, who is a high-flying rookie receiver, but they're missing Jatavian Sanders. Xavier Legette has been a disaster for them. They're missing Jalen Coker. Jatavian Sanders, as I mentioned, is out as well. It's basically Tet McMillan and nobody else. Now, in the running game, they feel good about Chuba Hubbard. They also have Rico Dowdle back there, although I am understanding that maybe Chuba Hubbard is a little bit banged up as well. And then you've got Bryce Young, who is another highly valued quarterback who has delivered mostly negative results. Has had a couple of moments at last season where he looked good, but for the most part has been very disappointing. Are the Dolphins going to be able to get to Bryce Young and force him into making mistakes? That has always been the question. I think it's safe to say that the Dolphins' pass rush this year, when it's just been bringing 4, has been very underwhelming. When they've brought the blitz, when they've brought pressure, they've had a bit more success, but they've really struggled when we're bringing just 4. And, it's crazy to see how the pendulum has swung from what we thought coming into the season, where we thought maybe this Dolphins pass rush might be one of the best in the league, to seeing where we're at right now when it's, mediocre at best. So, Brain, how do you see this Dolphins defense succeeding against this banged up Carolina offense?
I think you got a very similar game plan to what you had against the Jets, which is, as far as their passing game, you're gonna account for Tet McMillan. He's clearly their number one receiver. But you got to stop the run. And it's weird. Like the Dolphins, the last two games have been horrific defending the run in the first half of the game. The Bills were running for like 8 yards a clip on them in the first half of the game. The Jets were running for like 8 yards a clip in the first half of the game. And then in the second half of those games, they seem to fix it. And my question is, well, can we fix it knowing that that's what the other team, can we fix it before the game happens? Can we fix it before we're giving up 8 yards a clip? That's my question for this Dolphins defense. And similar to the Dolphins injuries on the offensive line, particularly at the guard position, the Carolina Panthers have injuries at the guard position. Not only did Robert Hunt go down, which, basically out for the year with a torn biceps injury, they also lost Chandler Zavala, who is their backup guard at right guard. So they're on their third right guard. So that's an area for us to watch to see if, guys like Zach Sealer and Kenneth Grant and Jordan Phillips can make some plays on the inside. And I think there will be opportunities for the pass rush, but I think it's, again, you have to earn the right to rush the passer. And you do that by stopping teams on first and second down and getting them into obvious passing down situations, or at least getting them into like 3rd and 6, get them into 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, where you can crank up the heat on them. You're not in like these 3rd and 2 situations, these 3rd and 1 situations. If you can't stop the run on first and second down, then you're constantly going to be on your heels on defense, because the offense has the entire playbook at their disposal on those types of plays. So I think it continues to be the case that you need to be able to win on first and second down. You need to be able to play with a lead. I thought the Dolphins defense did a better job in this game once they kind of took control of the game in the second half. But then I thought at times the last Jets drive of the game before their onside kick and the last drive right before the half, I thought Anthony Weaver inexplicably went really soft with the defense. And you can't do it. Like the Dolphins secondary is not good enough to just say, all right, we're just going to sit back and we're going to keep everything in front of us. And, we're going to let our secondary make the plays. They're not good enough to make the plays. You have to make the job easier for them. I think we've seen Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas step up, and we now have, at the very least, we have 2 serviceable starting cornerbacks. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a good safety. Your other safety spot between Ashton Davis and Melifonwu and Dante Trader, I mean, it's not inspiring or anything, but you've got enough back there that if you can put teams in poor down and distances, and you can speed up the process of the quarterback by putting pressure on them, you can make some things happen. They did some things to force some Jets turnovers in that game on Monday night. And so I'm curious to see if they'll be able to do the same thing. I'm not a big Bryce Young guy. And so I think you're going to have opportunities. I don't think he's the most accurate quarterback. I don't think he's the most cerebral quarterback. He tends to hold on to the ball. So you're going to have opportunities, but you're only going to have those opportunities if you can stop the run. If you don't stop the run, it could be a long day at the office for the defense. You're muted.
Never mute your microphone. I think that is absolutely going to be the key in this game, is stopping the run and playing up aggressively against that short game. This is not a team that is built to beat you over the top, especially with the lack of depth at receiver. Be aggressive, not the soft defensive shell that we've seen. Play up. Don't just give away 3 and 4 yard passes. Be aggressive, play tighter defense, because make this team earn the right to have that kind of soft coverage. Play up on them, because I think their inclination is to play the short game. Their inclination is not to beat you over the top. So that's my thought on that. If they can play up, they're going to be okay in this game. The question is, can they stop the run is ultimately going to be the big thing. If they can stop the run, I think it opens up everything else for them on Sunday. Brain, anything else on this one before we get into the hot takes?
No, let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's dive into one hot take. This is where we ask you what your one hot take is for Sunday's game. So if you're watching live on the I'm a Miami Dolphin fan Facebook page, let us know in the comments. If you're watching live on the Dolphins Talk YouTube channel, let us know in the comments. If you're watching on demand, let us know in the comments. If you're listening elsewhere, let us know in the comments. What is your hashtag one hot take for Dolphins at Panthers on Sunday? Brain, what is your one hot take for Dolphins at Panthers on Sunday?
My hot take for this game is that we are going to see somebody step up in the absence of Tyreek Hill. And, who's it going to be? Is it just going to be Jalen Waddle having a monster game? Is it going to be Darren Waller stepping up and having an increased workload? Is it going to be them just running the ball 40 times a game? Is it going to be Malik Washington? I think we're going to see Taj Washington in this game. And I think Taj Washington will have a role in this offense. And I'm calling for, how hot of a take do I need to have? I'm going to call 4 catches, which is huge for a guy who hasn't even played meaningful snaps. 4 catches for Taj Washington in this game.
I love that take, and I can't wait for him to be among the inactives on Sunday. That's going to be fantastic. Well, the Dolphins have brought Cedric Wilson back, and he is not going to be able to play this week because, go figure, the Dolphins signed somebody with an injury. So he's not going to be available. So I think it is likely that Taj Washington is going to be in the mix for the Dolphins on Sunday. Let's see what some of the people say. Eddie S. says Waddle gets over 100 yards and a touchdown. Rob E. Digital says this game will be a shootout. Robert Burns says the Dolphins offense will be more efficient without Hill on the field. I have my doubts about that. And Finn's Mechanic says Jonah will turn the corner. Ian Carter says Darren Waller scores 2 TDs. And then heading over to the Dolphins Talk Extra Discord. How about this one from Patrick Mullen? Devon Achane is abducted by aliens. Tua after the game, thanks God for protecting the good people anyway. Amazing. Let's see. Martini Jack says, since I nailed that last week's hot take, how about the Dolphins lose this game with turnovers? And he clears that up by saying, we won last week by being gifted 3 turnovers by the Jets. I think we pay it forward this week. Interesting. Timbo says we get 2 interceptions, 1 returned for a touchdown. Alex Pena says Waddle has 150 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns. And Wida says the ghost of Danny Crossman will haunt both his former teams by making a kickoff for each team go out of bounds. That is the kind of specificity I love when it comes to hot takes. Let's see if we've gotten any here in the comments live. Let's see. It says Wilson will be out, fire Greer. That's from Jordan Murray. And T Green says Dolphins going to fumble throughout the whole game. It's possible. Certainly possible. I'll tell you what I think my one hot take is going to be. And that is Alec Ingold receiving touchdown. Alec
Somebody's got to
Ingold.
step up.
Listen, he was open. I don't know. There was a play in that Jets game where Tua rolled out on that bootleg and Alec Ingold was open. And I stood up like, he's right there. And then he went elsewhere. Then he gave the ball to Achane and, but he had it. It was there. So I'm just saying it's in the offense. We just gotta make the call. That's all that's got to happen. All right. Prediction time, Brain. What you got on Sunday?
Well, I think this is going to be a close football game. Like I said, I think these are two bad football teams. I think these are two bad defenses. And, the Dolphins offense seemed like they have been trending in the right direction and they kind of found something, but losing Tyreek Hill is going to hurt them. It's a huge club that you're not going to have in the bag. And he's bailed them out so many times on third and longs. And you're not going to have that. And I think I think, unfortunately, you're probably going to, and whether it's unfortunate or not, you're probably going to coach knowing that you're probably going to be more conservative because of that. So the Dolphins are going to need to get themselves, these methodical long drives. And this is a team that I think screws up too much to put those kinds of drives together to consistently get touchdowns. So I think this is a game that, the Dolphins might move the ball well, but might struggle to score more than 20 points. On the flip side, I think the Carolina Panthers might struggle to score 20 points. But again, I think both of these teams are not very good defenses. So, I could see this game going way under. I could see this game going way over. But what I know is that when you have a game between two bad football teams, nobody wants to win. Everybody finds a way to keep the other team in the game. And what it's going to come down to is which team makes the big play or the big mistake late in the game. The Panthers played really, really well at home 2 weeks ago and were embarrassed on the road last week. They come back home. I think they're going to play like a team with something to prove. I think the Dolphins will come out and play hard as well. I think the Tyreek Hill injury probably will galvanize them more than, I think a lot of people will give them credit for or give Mike McDaniel credit for. And I think they'll give a good effort. And this is going to be a close, hard-fought game. But I'm going to take the Panthers to win this one 20-19.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm going to be honest with you here. I have been leaning Carolina in this game. But the more I think about it as we get close, I think Carolina is just kind of a disaster right now. And they are so banged up in so many areas that I think it's going to be one of those games where it's going to come down to the end. It's going to be close. It's going to be back and forth. I don't think either team is going to get out too far ahead of the other. And I think it's going to be ugly. I think there are going to be mistakes all over the place. And, I think it's one of those games where it's ultimately going to come down to who is the team that is able to execute at the end of the day. Who is the team that can play the cleanest of the games? And God, I got to tell you, part of me really wants to take the Dolphins here because I think that they are, you know what? I'm going to take the Dolphins because this is what they do. The Dolphins are the same old Dolphins. And so they're going to, after that win against the Jets, they're going to keep it up and they're going to build that momentum and they're going to win this game on Sunday against the Panthers to set up the game against the Chargers and get everybody talking about this is a chance. We might be back. We could be here. We could be in the mix. And because I think the Dolphins are just like, this is what they do. This is what they do. So give me the Dolphins to go on the road and defeat the Carolina Panthers. Let's make it a really bizarre score line. So how about Dolphins win 26-25 on a walk-off field goal? How about that?
26-25?
Yeah. It's a higher scoring game than I would have imagined, but here we are. Anyway, I'm actually very curious what the line is, what the over-under is on that game right now. Can you look that up here while I do all the plugs?
44.5. Dolphins are currently a 1.5 point road favorite.
Wow. Okay. 44.5. So I'm taking the over. And I'm taking the over in the Dolphins money line. So here we go.
And I'm
There it
taking
is.
the under in Panthers money line.
Okay, there we are. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. If you are a Dolphins Talk Extra subscriber, head on over to patreon.com/DolphinsTalk because we're about to go live with our bonus segment where we will discuss what kind of bagel the Miami Dolphins offense is without Tyreek Hill. We're also going to hear from Aaron's bagel of the week. We'll also check in on the survivor pool and see how things are going over there. Anyway, that's all for Dolphins Talk Extra subscribers. Again, if you're not, head on over patreon.com/DolphinsTalk. You can join for as little as $3 a month. Everybody else, we will be back on Monday, looking back at the Dolphins Panthers game this Sunday. So make sure you're visiting DolphinsTalk.com each and every day. Make sure you're subscribing to the channel and the podcast and all of the things. You're visiting caneswear.com. And of course, make sure that you take care of yourselves and each other. And as always, go Dolphins! And go Cubs go.